Hi, this is Greg Tavares, and this is a lesson about making creative code in vertexshaderart.com using GLSL. The last video went over using time to do motion. If you haven't seen that video, you might want to check it out. Or if you haven't seen any of the videos, you might want to go back to the beginning. If you saved your previous lesson, you'll probably want to load that up. Otherwise, you can click this link over here and get to a version that's ready to start this lesson. So the first thing I want to do before we go into colors, I want to kind of comment out the motion. So you can get an example, like an easy way to do that would just be to set this to 0 and comment this out. We'll set this to 0, comment that out. We still have the size motion, so we'll set that to 0 as well. Comment that out. Now, to set the color, right, the color is being set down here, and we could just do something like this. Like if I just put a U, right, this is right now 1 in red, 0 in green, 0 in blue. We have this value up here, U, that goes across the screen from 0 to 1. So if I just took that and put that in here, right, now all of a sudden we're getting a color. And V goes from 0 to 1 this way, so I could add that in over here. And now, right, we're getting some color. So that's one way to do it. But I actually found this chunk of code online, which I use a lot. And so I'm going to just paste that code up here at the top. What that code is it lets us specify hue, saturation, and a value, and it converts it to RGB for us. And I've added some clampings to make it more useful to me. But now I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to change this to hue, saturation, value to RGB, effect 3, 0, 1, 1. That will give me red. And what did I mess up? Oh, one more parenthesis. That'll give me red. And so let's explain that a little bit. Let's break it out. I'm going to add this up. I'm going to go hue, oh, I can't type hue. Hue equals 0, saturation equals 1, and value equals 1. And we'll change these to hue, oh, I can't even type, hue, saturation, value. And now you can see that these numbers go, hue goes from 0 to 1 and then repeats. So if I set this to 1, like it's orange, 2 is greenish yellow, 3 is green, 4 is aquamarine, 5 I guess is super aquamarine, I don't know what color that is. 6 is like blue, 7 is starting to get into deep purple, 8 is purple, 9 is like, I don't know what color that is, reddish purple. And if we go to 1, right, we'll be back to red because it just wraps around. So as a simple example, let's just make this U, and you see the hue goes across. So as you can see, we would expect this to go from red to red, but it's not. Why is that? It's because of this 1.3. Remember, our grid is expanded beyond the edges of the screen. If I set this back to 1, then you can see when the whole grid fits on the screen, we get red to red. But because we're stretching the grid, we're not seeing those parts that are off the screen. So let's try a few other things, like if we set saturation to V, right, then you can see at this side, at the bottom, it's unsaturated, it's a gray, and at the top, it's very saturated. In fact, let's set this back to 0 just so we can see the full spectrum. Similarly, if we take value and set that to V instead, right? Oops. Right, you'll see at the bottom when value is 0, it's black. When at the top, it's as saturated as it can be. So what if we animate it though, right? Let's set the hue to the time. So now it's changing to the different hues. Of course, like before, just changing everything to one value is kind of boring. So what if we change this to, I don't know, hue times 0.1, then we get a red just kind of to the next hue, if you want to call it that, red to orange. Then we could add in, I don't know, the sign of time. That will make it go across. It's a little bit weird. Let's add in value times 20. Now we're getting somewhere. We're getting a little bit more interesting. This is probably adjusting too much because it's adjusting plus or minus 1, which is the entire range of hue. So let's make that like 0.05, just a little bit. Now we've got something very subtle going through here. I'm going to take this saturation one, this value one back off, and we can see it. We've got this color going through very subtly. What else could we do? Let's change this value to also use a sign. So value time plus v times 20. I don't want v, I want v times u times 20. Sine is -1 to +1. So you can see there's this large area where it's below 0. Multiplying it by 0.5 makes it go -0.5 to +0.5. And adding 0.5 makes it go from 0 to 1. And so this becomes a little bit less and we get a little bit more range. And so then if we like put the motion back in, we'll start to get something a little more interesting. Put this back in, put the sizes back in, and let's put the scale back in so we don't get the stuff off the screen. And now let's look at, like, not only are we getting interesting patterns, but if we adjust this, right, we can see the patterns in there in different things. Adjust it the other way. Let's set it back to 1,000. Other things we could do, right, or we could speed these up. So like if we take this one, right now, this is time, this is time, this is time, this is time. What if we adjust each of those so that the clocks aren't in sync? So you'll notice like things are kind of matching up here. It's always the same, right? It's always big when it's on this curve. It's always small when it's here in the middle. But if we change all these clocks, so we'll make this clock times 1.1, and we'll make this clock times 1.2, and we'll make this clock times 1.3, and we'll make this clock times 1.4. And now you see that those clocks no longer match, so where it's big kind of slides backward. You can see it sliding over to the light part out of the dark part. And I kind of like doing that kind of stuff. I like it not the clocks not to be in sync. So that's basically where we are. That's color. And right, you go through and figure out some value to adjust the colors by, and do crazy things. Like you saw, if I put a times here, I got something a little bit weirder. Whether that's cool or not is up to you. But we're going to move on to sound next. So save your work if you want, and catch us in the next video.